Hey, help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also hit that like button to subscribe if you want more Cavs-focused content. Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into, so let's just jump into it. First question comes from R. Speller, who says, oh, that ain't it. That ain't it, y'all. Hold on. All right, here we go. We got it. What should we expect from Cleveland in the first round against either Miami or Atlanta? So I'm recording this before before the Cavs know who their opponent's going to be. We're going to find out a couple hours from now from recording this video. So I'm going to bring up both opponents just to kind of talk about them in some way, just to give myself cover. So with Miami and Atlanta, both of them, the number one thing you want to make sure you see from the Cavaliers, which I'm confident you will, is defensive effort, right? You want to see that defensive effort ratchet up, right? The Cavs have been selective about when their defensive effort turns up during the course of the year. This has been done with the understanding that during the regular season, you just don't have to play great defense when your offense is scoring at the clip that they're scoring. But I want to see the Cavs ratchet up their defensive intensity a little bit more. Don't have to be at 100%, right? Because I don't think you have to be at 100% to beat Miami or Atlanta. But you definitely don't want to get outplayed in the first two games effort-wise by one of these teams. You want to set the tone early on that this is going to be a tough series for you to win and that we're taking this very seriously. So that's number one I want to see from the Cavs in the first round. Obviously, health is another thing you want to see out the Cavs. But, yeah, I want to see them ratchet up that defensive intensity because I know this team can score. I know Ty Jerome's going to get buckets. You know, I know that DeAndre Hunter's going to make shots. I know that Donovan Mitchell's good. I know that Darius Garland's good. Maybe you want to see that more intensity from Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. But overall, defensive intensity, I want to see it ratcheted up. I want to see them play at that playoff level intensity and set the tone in the first 2 or 3 games in this series about how things should go going forward. So whether it's Atlanta or Miami, I think that's important. With Miami, I think it'll be a bit more of a task because Miami's going to come at you with effort no matter what. With Atlanta, we don't really know what they're going to get, but I'm pretty sure they're going to give you strong effort, right? But I think you can break Atlanta. I don't know if you can break Miami early in the series. I think they're too experienced. They go down 0-2, they're not going to trip. But Atlanta, if you put a good sign out for those first 2 games, might make your life easier game 3 and 4. So either way, expect to play, expect to send a message, and kind of not just let them know, but let the world know what the Cavs can do when they play defense. Because I say this all the time. When the Cavs put together strong defensive efforts, when they really want to play defense, they're the best basketball team in the world. Nobody can beat them, But they've been selective about their defensive effort this year. Evan Mobley is the GOAT says, well, what do you think Evan Mobley's ceiling is? It's self-evident by my name. I'm a big Mobley fan. I think Evan Mobley's ceiling is pretty hard to quantify because he's a mix of a bunch of different players, right? He's KG, but he plays in today's NBA. And if KG played in today's NBA, he'd look like a different player than what we've seen from KG. But I think that's the best parallel, is that he could be Kevin Garnett. He could be this 3-level scorer, this defensive anchor that gives your team a very high floor and a very high ceiling. I think he said, I think I could be a top 5 player in the NBA. I agree with him. I think he can be a top 5 player in the NBA. So that's why I think Evan's ceiling is a top 5 player in the league. I think the main thing Evan's lacking is he needs to add a little bit more weight still. He needs to get physically bigger, and like he's not 25, 26 yet. That's when you usually get your big boy weight. So, he still has time to grow into his body. But even if he doesn't, right, KG wasn't ever a bulky guy, but KG developed wiry strength throughout his career, right? So it might just be Evan Mobley's not going to be super bulky like an Anthony Davis, but he develops that wiry strength. If he can get that, that's great. And then I think the only thing with Evan Mobley is he needs that confidence, right? And I think that's what, if you ever hear KG talk about him, I think KG sees this in Evan, where I think he understands the only thing outside of maybe more strength that Evan is missing that he doesn't have right now is the belief that he deserves to be the guy to take the shot, deserves to be the guy involved in the offense. Sometimes I feel like Evan doesn't believe he is one of the best 2-3 players on his team offensively, and he doesn't deserve the ball. But, I want him to get that confidence, because I think once he develops that, he's going to be a cold stone killer. A stone cold killer. A stone cold killer. But yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm high on him too. All right. Reven says, do you think Okoro will get playoff minutes? He's always been a valuable defender, but his offense isn't clicking. Kenny should keep him on the floor. I think Okoro is going to be used in a very specialist type way, right? If Tyrese Halliburton's going off and you need to stop the bleeding, I think that's the role for Isaac Okoro, is to go out there and try to put the clamps on a guard, right, and slow their momentum down, make them call a timeout, maybe get some defensive energy going, right? Basically, I think Isaac Okoro is only going to hit the floor if something has gone wrong with the team the Cavs are playing, right? If Tyler Hero's going off, Isaac Okoro needs to go out there, right? If the Cavs go down by 10 and somebody's heating up, that's when Isaac hits the floor, because then you need some hustle plays to spark something, a defensive effort to spark more energy. That's the role that Isaac is going to have on this team. And if he's successful, that means he would have had about 2 or 3 times during the playoffs where he is part of kicking off a 10-0 run or something like that. I think that's Isaac's role for this basketball team, and that's a valuable role for him, but it doesn't mean he plays every day, Sepai says, what do you feel like the chances are that the Cavs can sign Ty Jerome to a 2-3 year deal, and how much of an impact would a supermax on Mobley be to win, if he were to win Defensive Player of the Year or be All NBA? I have no clue. I'm not as tapped into the NBA cap situation as I am on the NFL side of things. I'm still trying to learn what the NBA cap situation is, because it's a lot more complicated than the NFL's. So I'm not even going to give you false information there. From what I hear, it's not good, right? It's going to be tight. I think the Cavs can sign Ty Jerome to a mid-level exception, and hopefully he wants to do that, because, I think it's a perfect fit here in Cleveland, so we'll see. Michael says, hey, Q, how come when the media talks about the Cavs-Celtics matchup, they never mention the fact that the Celtics, always blow these big leads in late games against us? I know it's not always good to be down big going into the playoffs. Do you think going into that matchup, the Cavs would be the mentally tougher team? This is a great point. Because for as much as I've had to sit through, can the Cavs beat the Celtics conversations on ESPN, nobody ever does bring up, like you mentioned, the Cavs have come back from 4 20-point leads Boston has put on them in each of those games. I think they've come back from 20 each game they've played Boston. And I think that's important. I think that's worth noting, that the Cavs have that ability and that resilience. For a team that people claim has never been through adversity and shouldn't be taken serious because they haven't been through adversity this year, they sure have come back from a lot of big leads, especially against Boston. But it's one of those things. What you mentioned there, Michael, takes actually watching the Cavs, understanding the Cavs, their flaws, their positives, their negatives, in order to make that point. You have been an attentive watcher of the Cleveland Cavaliers, so you can get to that point. The reason I don't think people nationally make that point is because it's not on their mind. They're not very aware of that point And that means that things like that slip through the cracks. They just go, oh, the Cavs were 2-2 against the Celtics. Oh, the Cavs went down 20 that one time. You know, that's why the media doesn't talk about it, because it doesn't pass their mind, because their default is that the Celtics are better than the Cavs. So they're not looking for anything to go against that default mind or default narrative that they have there, which means that things like that tend to slip through the cracks. But you know what? I'm perfectly okay with shocking the world and talking cash money shit after it. You know, I'm if the Cavs beat the Celtics. Make sure you subscribe to notified to the channel. You think I make fun of the Knicks? Man, I'm getting excited just thinking about it. But if we eliminate the Boston Celtics, lock it in. Generational. It might be a 2-hour just me just talking shit about the Boston Celtics, ESPN, and how the Cavs have been covered, because I got a lot I want to get off. But I'll wait. I'll wait to see what the Cavs do. Cody says the Cavs are considered vulnerable because they're too small guard lineup. But this is a false narrative. Often we either have Donovan Mitchell or Darius on the court with a larger guard to help nullify mismatches. Is the issue the media makes of it, makes it out to be, or is it less of a concern? Also, who's the better player overall, Mobley or Porzingis? Ooh, that's hard, because they're not similar enough for me to compare like that. Like, Porzingis is probably, for what we know Porzingis is, he's probably better than Mobley right now, but I don't think it's crazy to think that we could get to the end of the playoffs and think Mobley's better than Porzingis. It's in flux to me. Now, to answer the original question, why do people consider the Cavs vulnerable because of the two-guard lineup when they don't really run the two-guard lineup a lot? I think, one, it's just something people are used to saying. Two, like our point earlier, people don't watch the Cavs intimately enough to understand that the Cavs use these players in very specific ways, right? People just kind of go, two small guards, and just think that's the end of the conversation. There's no nuance to it at all. So I think that makes a ton of sense there. Also, I think Darius is a small guard for sure, right? But Donovan Mitchell's not a small guard. He's not weak at the two-guard position. He's strong enough to hold his own, and when he does get switched into the block, he fights really hard, and he's really, really strong, and he can get rebounds like a big guard. Like, Donovan Mitchell doesn't play like a small guard. He plays like he's 6'5", 6'6", and he has the wingspan of somebody who's 6'5", 6'6", and the strength of somebody and the weight of somebody who's 6'5", 6'6". So I think that's just boiling down to people just making assumptions because they look on the thing and they go, Donovan Mitchell's not tall, Darius Garland's not tall, and they don't really look at the nuance of it all, because I don't even think our two small guard lineup is really a true two small guard lineup, because Donovan doesn't play like a small guard. You know, I think that's what's been lost in it. I don't know how it's been lost. Like, Donovan's been playing like a big guard his whole career, has been defending like a big guard since he's been in Cleveland. You know, it's just people get used to saying shit. You know what I mean? And they get really stubborn when people call out that, hey, maybe this isn't the time that rule applies. You know, maybe this might be an exception here. Expensive says, how nervous are you from not having a true big man on the roster? Jared Allen and Evan are elite, but nobody behind them is taller than like 6'9". I would be more concerned if there were more true bigs in the East, especially in the playoffs this year, but there's just not really any of them in the East right now. Like, yeah, Kristaps is big and Al Horford is big, but they play on the perimeter so often that they're not going to bother you in the way that like a Zubac would bother you, or a Joel Embiid, if he were on a good team, would bother you, right? Or Anthony Davis or something like that. So, you know, Boston doesn't really have any bigs. New York has Cat. We know Cat don't play like a true big, so it's not really something that's going to exploit you, and New York plays no defense anyways, so it's not really a problem against New York. Like, yeah, they got Mitchell Robinson, but if you get Mitchell Robinson in foul trouble early, then what the fuck are they going to switch to? They got nothing. The Pacers, I mean, Miles Turner, he's another spacer as a big instead of like a true big there. So I don't really think that's going to be the same problem. Like Bam Adebayo, he's more of an athletic big. You could throw Evan Mobley on and defend him that way. Like there's nobody whose whole game is overwhelming you with size, or a big chunk of their game is overwhelming you with size, that you're really projected to play in the playoffs this year. Even if you get to Atlanta, in the Miami Heat, right? First round matchups. If you look at the 4 or 5 matchup, Giannis is a big, but he plays with the ball in his hand. That's somebody that Evan and Jared have had success defending pretty consistently in their time in Cleveland. So like, I don't really worry about that being a huge mismatch problem. So that's why I don't think the not having a backup big there is a problem. And then also don't underestimate that DeAndre Hunter is the de facto backup big, right? If they need a power forward to step up, or if Jared or Evan get in foul trouble, that's what DeAndre Hunter is there for, right? He's 6'8", he's very strong. He's somebody you could feel comfortable putting up against Giannis, having to defend Kristaps Porzingis, going up against Bam Adebayo. Like he's another body they could throw at that problem. And in the East, where nobody's really going to throw a traditional 7-foot, 270-pound big at you, it's not that big of a deal. But to your point, if the Cavs end up in the finals and they go up and play against a team like the the Clippers, who have, you know, all kind of guys who offer that strength there, Kawhi, James, Zubac, right? Like all these guys who offer exceptional size and strength at their position, then I do think the lack of bigs that you have is going to become a problem, because that's, I think, the Cavs' Achilles heel, is that they're not the strongest team in the world, and that if you are big enough, you can move the Cavs off of the paint, right? Which is a problem for them. The thing is that there's not a lot of teams that are equipped to do that in the NBA right now, which is why the Cavs are built the way that they're built. And in the East especially, like Boston doesn't win games by moving you in the paint. Nobody else in the East tries to win games like that with physicality and all of that, except for maybe Detroit, but Detroit's not an exceptionally large team. So that is why I don't think it's as big as a problem, but you know, I do hope that gets addressed sooner than later, because eventually it is going to become something that the Cavs have to pay attention to. Because if the Cavs do win a championship or even just get to the NBA Finals, other teams in the East are going to understand that that's a weakness of the Cavs and start to try to load up with like large bigs to try to exploit the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, you know, patch the problem before it becomes a problem. But as far as this playoff is concerned, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. We'll see, though. I could be wrong. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.